The sequester could cost tens of thousands of jobs.
750,000 American jobs lost.
10,000 teacher jobs would be put at risk.
Sequester equals job loss.
It is bad for job growth.
People will lose their jobs.
And then they'll die. Political warnings that keep coming about automatic cuts that will spark a firing spree. At the same time, the government is on a hiring spree, posting openings for secretaries making 80 grand a year, community planners making 106 grand, museum workers making 165,000. Kayleigh McEnany,
McEnany,
I apologize, says all of this is proof that the sequester hoopla is just a White House scare tactic. Matt Welch and Alexandra Acker-Lyons are back as well. Explain that, Kayleigh, not your beautiful name that I screwed up, no. But that view, that it's a scare tactic.
Absolutely. The president knows, as well as we all know, I believe, that there is nothing being cut. When you look at this, government spending is increasing by $15 billion from 2012 to 2013. I'm not sure how that equals a cut.
This is shaving that growth by about 1.5%.
Right. But at the end of the day, it's a reduction and an increase because it's still increasing by $15 billion. And when you put that into a historical perspective, post-World War II, spending was cut by 30% of GDP. 1980s, 1990s, it was cut by 2 to 3% of GDP in each of those decades. President Obama has taken us up, even with sequestration, by 2%. Spending has increased. We managed in the 80s, we managed in the 90s, we managed after World War II. We can manage now with a $15 billion increase in spending.
Well, I don't know, Matt, if we can. I mean, we bellyache about these cuts. I'm not saying for those affected, not a problem. But I am saying it's a big problem for all of us if we can't do this much, because this is really a rounding error on a rounding error.
It's amazing the kind of scare tactics. I mean, if you look at the Pentagon, which says that something like more than half of Air Force aircraft will be potentially grounded during the year because of maintenance. The question is, after a decade in which they increased their budgets by 70%, couldn't you pay for maintenance with some of that? I mean, it's the manager.
By the way, the feared cuts alone, we counted them up. I mean, they're more like $850 billion, not $85 billion. So someone has added this and concluded someone's exaggerating here.
Totally, and that's why you can see in all these sort of scare letters that they have on the Senate Appropriations Committee, it's all these jobs are at risk. Not that they're going to be cut, not that there's plans that we're actually going to fire anybody, not that the rubber rooms in New York City are going to be closed, but there's teacher jobs at risk. They use all these sort of weasel words in the middle of trying to scare people about the firefighters and the people that we actually like losing their jobs.
Right. That would be sort of like, Alexander, I'm at risk of being fit. Always a worry. But I guess where I'm going here, Alexander, is where this goes. Because I always think, and Alice Ridlett touched on this in a prior segment, that I cast blame on both parties. They've both spent like crazy when they were in power and in charge. So I think everyone needs to be like, you know, an alcoholic at an AA meeting, not that I would know, and just stand up and say, I'm a spendaholic, and I'm essentially going to admit that and move on. But we're so interested in whose fault this is, how we got here, that we're not even dealing with the very real issues to get us out of here.
You're absolutely right, Neil. I mean, both sides are behaving like children when they need to be leading our country. And I think the real issue here is, will putting a stop to the sequestration actually put a stop to all of these economic problems that we've been having? The uncertainty in the economy, people not being able to plan for hiring, forget the 600,000 federal government jobs that might be impacted, of the over 2 million that could be impacted. Might be, I agree, but 1.4 in the private sector. 1.4 in the private sector. So,
but do you think,
what we're really looking at here
I think the sequestration is coming whether a lot of folks like it or not, which is fine. I just think that my worry here is because of this PR dust-up, they're never going to do this again. And I've always looked, and maybe Kayleigh can help me with this, that the sequestration was at best a backup backbone for both parties. Now the backbone is here. You have to do something, and if you move it, you've essentially moved your backbone, and you're a jellyfish. So better to have the backup plan than none.
Absolutely. And if this really was the doomsday scenario that the president would have us believe it was, he has an option to get out of it. And that option is to reduce spending elsewhere, to come to the middle, to work with the GOP.
You would never entertain revenues then?
Absolutely not.
Because you argue what? They were entertained last time.
They were entertained last time. There was a tax increase on 77% of Americans.
So no more. What do you think of that argument? Where they've given, Republicans say, we've given you a pound of flesh, stop it.
Bill Clinton's last budget was $1.8 trillion. Barack Obama's first was $3.6 trillion. I think you can do a little bit of math there and figure out that we have a spending problem. If we had kept spending at the rate of inflation plus population growth since Bill Clinton, we'd be talking about surpluses. We're not talking about surpluses because government, unless you got a gun to its head, will grow itself constantly.
Alexander, real quickly, is this going to boomerang on the president? Real quick.
No, I don't think so. I think this is absolutely a win for Democrats. I mean, this is a Bush budget a budget problem we inherited: two wars, an aging population, and a recession.
You left